They said legends never die. They were wrong. The immortal has fallen, and the wrestling world will never be the same. What you're about to hear in the next few minutes isn't just another tribute video. This is the moment where silence was broken, where a warrior who stood in the shadows for decades finally stepped into the light to reveal truths that will shake everything you thought you knew about the man, the myth, the monster that was Hulk Hogan. Sting has spoken. And what came out of his mouth? Nobody was ready for this. I'm standing here right now, still processing what I just witnessed. The icon, the Stinger, the man who carried the weight of professional wrestling on his back while everyone else was chasing spotlights, finally opened up about his relationship with the Hulkster. And let me tell you something right now, if you thought you knew these men, if you thought you understood the history between WCW and WWE, between the NWO and Sting, between two titans who defined generations, you don't know anything. Not yet. Before we dive into this emotional whirlwind, I need you to do something for me. I need you to understand that this channel, Slamzone, exists because of people like you. Real wrestling fans. People who feel this business in their bones. We're building a family here, a community where legends are celebrated, truths are told, and history is preserved. So right now, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, because what's coming in this video is going to leave you speechless, and you're going to want to be here every single week when we break down moments that matter. This isn't just content. This is our story, and I want you to be part of it. The news hit like a freight train. Hulk Hogan, the man who body-slammed Andre the Giant in front of 93,000 screaming fans at the Pontiac Silverdome, the man who made wrestling mainstream, who turned bandanas and 24-inch pythons into symbols recognized around the entire planet, was gone. Social media exploded. Wrestlers past and present flooded timelines with tributes. The Rock, Stone Cold, John Cena, Triple H, every single name you can think of posted their respects. But one name was missing. One voice stayed silent while the world mourned. Sting. Days passed. The funeral was planned. Memorial shows were announced. Legends shared stories on podcasts, in interviews, on every platform imaginable. Still, nothing from Sting. People started asking questions. Why wasn't he saying anything? These two men defined an entire era of wrestling. They were connected by history, by battles, by a war between companies that literally shaped the industry we love today. The Monday Night Wars weren't just about ratings. They were about these men, about the paths they chose, about loyalty and betrayal and everything in between. You could feel the tension building. Social media warriors started speculating. Was there bad blood nobody knew about? Did something happen behind the scenes that never made it to the dirt sheets? The silence from Sting became louder than any tribute could ever be. And that silence, that deafening, painful silence, became its own story. Then, 3 days ago, something changed. A video surfaced. Not some high-production WWE documentary moment. Not a polished interview with a major network. This was raw. This was real. Sting, sitting in what looked like his home, wearing a simple black shirt, his face paint gone, his iconic hair pulled back, looking more vulnerable than we've ever seen him. The camera was shaky. The lighting wasn't perfect. But none of that mattered. Because when he started speaking, when those first words came out, you could feel the weight of 30 years crashing down all at once. I didn't know what to say, Sting began, his voice cracking slightly. How do you sum up a man like Terry? How do you explain to people what it was really like, standing across from him, competing with him, watching him build an empire while I was trying to protect what we had in WCW? You could see it in his eyes. This wasn't rehearsed. This wasn't calculated. This was a man who had been carrying something heavy, something painful, something that needed to come out, and it was about to explode. Sting leaned forward, his hands clasped together, and continued. People think they know the story. They think it was us versus them. WWE versus WCW. Hogan versus Sting. Good versus evil. But it was never that simple. It was never that clean. He started talking about the first time they met. Not in a ring. Not at a pay-per-view. But backstage at a small independent show in the early 80s, before either of them was famous, before the world knew their names. Two young wrestlers with fire in their bellies and dreams bigger than the buildings they were performing in. Sting described how Hogan gave him advice that night, told him to never let anyone define who he was supposed to be, to find his own path, to be original. Terry told me something I never forgot, Sting said, his voice growing stronger now. He said, kid, they're going to want you to be the next somebody. Don't be the next anybody. Be the first you. And I carried that with me for my entire career. The emotion in his words was palpable. You could feel the respect, the admiration, but there was something else there too. Something darker. Something that had been buried for decades. Sting's expression changed. His jaw tightened. But here's what nobody talks about. Here's what gets lost in all the Hulkamania worship and the legend building. Terry made choices. Choices that hurt people. Choices that destroyed careers. choices that put himself above the business we all claim to love. This is where it got uncomfortable. This is where you could feel the shift happening in real time. Sting wasn't holding back anymore. He started talking about WCW, about the politics, about how Hogan came in with creative control written into his contract and immediately started manipulating storylines to keep himself on top, about how talented wrestlers who had given everything to that company suddenly found themselves jobbing out to the NWO, feeding the Hogan machine while their own careers withered and died. Bret Hart deserved better, Sting said, and you could hear the anger creeping into his voice now. Chris Benoit deserved better. Eddie Guerrero deserved better. Guys who could work circles around most of the roster, guys who bled for that company, and they were pushed aside because Terry needed to be the guy, always the guy, forever the guy. He paused, running his hand over his face, and you could see him wrestling with the words. And I was complicit. I didn't speak up enough. I didn't push back hard enough. Because I wanted to believe that the business would reward loyalty, that doing things the right way would matter in the end. But it didn't. The politics won. The egos won. And WCW died because of it. The video continued, and Sting shifted gears again. His voice softened. But here's what I need people to understand. Despite all of that, despite the frustration and the anger and the disappointment, Terry was still my brother. We were still soldiers in the same war. And when I heard the news, when I found out he was gone, it felt like a piece of my own history died with him. This is where it hit me. This is where I realized what Sting was really doing. He wasn't just eulogizing Hogan. He wasn't just sharing memories. He was wrestling with the complicated truth that real life is messy, that heroes have flaws, that legends make mistakes, that you can love someone and be angry with them at the same time. I wanted to hate him sometimes, Sting admitted, tears forming in his eyes now. I wanted to be able to just write him off as a selfish politician who only cared about himself. But then I'd remember that night in the independent show. I'd remember the advice he gave me. I'd remember the phone call he made when my son was sick, checking in when he didn't have to. I'd remember the man behind the character, and it would break me all over again. Listen, I know this is heavy. I know we're in deep right now. But this is why Slamzone exists. To tell these stories the right way. To honor the complexity of the people who gave us the moments we cherish. If you're feeling this like I am, if this matters to you, then join this family. Hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment and tell me how Hulk Hogan impacted your life, good or bad. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because this conversation is bigger than wrestling. This is about legacy. This is about truth. And we're just getting started. Sting took a deep breath in the video, and you could sense something big was coming. He looked directly into the camera, and for the first time, you could see the Stinger. Not Steve Borden. Not the man behind the paint. But the warrior. The icon. The legend. There's something I never told anyone, he said slowly. Something that happened 5 years ago that I've kept to myself because I didn't know if the world was ready to hear it. But now, with Terry gone, I think people need to know who he really was in those final years. The screen seemed to hold its breath. I held mine. Terry called me out of nowhere one night. It was late. Maybe 2 in the morning. I hadn't heard from him in months, maybe longer. And when I picked up the phone, I could hear it in his voice. He was broken. Not physically, but spiritually. He told me he'd been thinking about his legacy. About all the decisions he made. About all the people he stepped on to stay on top. And he asked me something I never expected. Sting's voice cracked again. He asked me if I forgave him. I didn't know what to say at first. Part of me wanted to tell him everything I'd been holding in for years. All the frustration, all the resentment, all the ways his ego had damaged the business we both loved. But then I heard the pain in his voice. Real pain. The kind that comes when you're finally alone with your choices and you can't hide from them anymore. And I realized something in that moment. Terry Bollea, the man, was asking for forgiveness. Not Hulk Hogan. Not Hollywood Hogan. Not the character. The man. The tears were flowing freely down Sting's face now. And I told him yes. I told him I forgave him. Because that's what brothers do. We fight. We disagree. We hurt each other. But at the end of the day, we're family. And family forgives. Sting wiped his eyes and continued. He thanked me. We talked for another hour about life, about faith, about regrets. And before we hung up, he said something I'll never forget. He said, Steve, when I'm gone, tell them the truth. Tell them I was flawed. Tell them I made mistakes. But tell them I tried to make it right in the end. Please tell them I tried. The video was winding down now, and Sting composed himself. So that's what I'm doing. I'm telling the truth. Hulk Hogan was complicated. He was brilliant and selfish. He was generous and manipulative. He was a legend and a politician. He was all of those things at once. And that's okay. Because that's what makes us human. We're not characters in a storyline with clear heroes and villains. We're real people trying to navigate impossible situations and make sense of our choices. He looked into the camera one last time. Terry, if you can hear me somehow, I hope you found the peace you were looking for. I hope you know that despite everything, you mattered. You changed lives. You inspired millions. And yeah, you made mistakes. But you also tried to fix them. And that counts for something. That counts for everything. The video ended. The screen went black. And I sat there in silence, trying to process what I just witnessed. This is why we watch wrestling. Not just for the matches or the championships or the spectacular moves. We watch because these people become part of our lives. Their stories become our stories. Their struggles reflect our struggles. And when they're gone, we're left with the complicated, beautiful, messy truth of who they really were. Hulk Hogan is gone. But the conversation about his legacy, about what he meant and what he cost, that conversation will continue. And it should. Because that's how we honor people. Not by pretending they were perfect, but by acknowledging the full scope of their humanity. Before you go, I need you to do something. Hit that like button if this touched you. Subscribe to Slamzone because we're going to keep having these real conversations about wrestling, about legacy, about the people behind the characters. Comment below and share your Hulk Hogan memories, the good and the complicated. And share this video with someone who needs to hear Sting's message. Because this isn't just wrestling content. This is life. This is truth. This is what matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this family. And thank you for understanding that legends aren't perfect. They're just people who tried their best with what they had. I'll see you next week on Slamzone. Until then, keep the memory alive. Keep the conversation going. And never forget that even immortals are human in the end.